Welcome back. We are the last day of CPAC 2017. I'm Dave Sussman, and on behalf of Ricochet, we're very pleased to have here Mike Ghouse. Mike Ghouse is the Executive Director of the Center of Pluralism, and you may know Mike from many different television shows and syndicated articles throughout the country, and more frequently, if you watch Fox News, you see him sitting on the board with Sean Hannity and having quite some interesting arguments over the years. So welcome. Appreciate you being here.
Good to be here. I'm so glad you're doing this show.
Thank you. Yeah. So one of the things that's really interesting from our perspective, and certainly from our readers' perspective, is with what is happening right now from a geopolitical perspective with Islam, and in many cases what the fight is against, and that is extreme Islam. And obviously you're coming from a moderated position, and you're trying to obviously spread the word of that moderation. The name of your firm is the Center of Pluralism.
Indeed.
Okay. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that and what it is that you hope to achieve with it?
Well, Center for Pluralism is, let me define pluralism in one sentence. It is respecting the otherness of others. You are who you are, I am who I am. Let's learn to live with each other as we are created by the Creator. That's pluralism. Our mission is very simple. We want to build a cohesive America where no American, whether you're African American, Jewish, Muslim, Hindu, pagan, atheist, does not matter. No American should live in fear of the fellow Americans. How do we do that? We can do through many programs. That is sitting down and having a conversation like this. Once you see a different point of view, all of a sudden the ill will that you may have based on the myths will dissipate. For example, I've been attending this CPAC meeting. I'm writing some extensive notes. It will be out in a few days. What I saw was some of the conservatives, the language they're speaking is no different than liberals. If you look at the bottom line.
How so?
Everybody, whether you are conservative, liberal, or moderate, we have one common goal. That is, we want to live a life of our own. We don't want anybody to mess with our lives. Number two, we want to have a decent family life, decent health, a good job, retire in peace, and have security for our children and grandchildren. There is not a conservative that would disagree with it. There is not a liberal that would disagree with it.
One of the things that's obviously been of major importance and is on front headlines, and especially from a conservative perspective, has been national security. And when we're talking about national security, we're talking about Islamic fundamentalism, not only just in the Middle East, in Europe, but also in the United States. Whether it's lone wolves or whether it's attacks that are prevented. From your understanding, when you're talking about the extremist aspect of the Islamic culture and the religion, what are some of the biggest concerns you see right now? Are you concerned about Sharia law in states that's starting to percolate a little bit?
First of all, Sharia is not a problem at all in America. Almost all Muslims believe in our Constitution. The purpose of Sharia law, where there is no other law. For example, in Egypt, that's the only law available to the people. They are not familiar with a secular law. So the purpose of the Sharia law was to bring justice, get hold of the criminals, bring justice to the society. That's the purpose. Since it is man-made, like our Constitution that has gone through 27 amendments, Sharia is man-made, and this is a very clear misunderstanding among Muslims. Somehow they believe this is divine law. It is not divine at all. It is made by, it's created after about 150 years after Prophet Muhammad passed away. When there was a new problem, societal problem, social conflict, Prophet Muhammad solved the problems. But when he was gone, the society could not make decisions. They were concerned, how do we find this? So they decided to look into the Quran, look into Prophet Muhammad's sayings, and create a body of law to find justice for the people who are being oppressed or who are being injustices done to them. So it was a human effort to create. So there are two things here, David. Muslims need to understand clearly that it is not a divine law. It is influenced by divine, but designed by men, and being created by men, it has flaws. There are many flaws in Sharia law, that needs fixing. Once you fix that, it will be a good law to serve people. But there are flaws in it. From an American point of view, Sharia does not come into effect. American Muslims have chosen to place their trust in American laws because it serves them. What you, me, and every human wants is justice and freedom to live our lives.
Yet we see Sharia percolating, certainly in Western Europe, and you see that in London. I was born and raised in London. I go back to certain no-go zones that you can't go to in Birmingham, in certain areas of Paris. They do exist. We just saw Sweden recently. One of the things that we see here in the United States is certain areas in Minnesota, in Michigan, there are pockets of Sharia. There are areas. Now, we don't see problems that are coming out of that, but you also have a human rights issue with those situations. In the United States of America, in England, where you have free societies where women are not allowed to do certain things that from an equality standpoint. Is that something that, how do you get that message out to those individuals that are being raised in that environment to think differently?
It's one thing best about America. This is, I call it God's only country. Everybody, whoever comes to America, no matter how fundamental they are, eventually they become Americanized, meaning they're tempered down to be more like everybody else. That is what America does to everyone. So the Sharia that you're talking about is not going to be in America. Nobody needs to worry about it, but we are going to do a conference in about 2 months where we are going to bring all the Muslim institutions in America and major leaders of Muslims make a declaration, we don't want Sharia.
And that's great for America, and if that could certainly be publicized, I think that's a good thing. But when you start going to areas and pockets of Western Europe, like London, I mean, Anjem Chowdhury, he's now in prison. Okay, he's been publicized on certain networks throughout the United States and is all over. He's got a huge following.
He does.
I mean, he has a lot of people that dedicate themselves to not just the religion, but an individual now, an Anjem Chowdhury.
Yeah.
And
There's a personality cult. Let me share why Europe is going through the turmoil. America will not do that because American Muslims are putting right things in the places to prevent that from happening. Europe, the Muslims are immigrants, are not integrated into the society. They live in separate ghettos. They have never had the chance to see from another point of view. Whereas the American Muslims see the freedom of speech. Most people learn it here. Freedom of speech, they see the value of America places on individual liberty. They're seeing it and they want it. Most Muslims have had that little experience back their homes where some idiot, excuse my language, someone tries to dictate them, hey, you need to pray this way, you need to follow this. They feel so good being in America. Nobody tells them what to do. This is my responsibility to pray between me and my God. Who are you to tell me that? In fact, Islam tells very clearly there is no compulsion in religion. And Muslims have forgotten that. There is zero compulsion. You cannot push anybody to believe against one's will.
So the authentic faith, if it was followed, wouldn't be adhering to Sharia, is what you're saying?
Absolutely. Sharia came about 150 years after Prophet. So if UK, France, Germany, if they make a sincere effort to integrate people, adapt different families, when they learn your way, and they're more likely to be with you. But if you leave them to live separately, they have no choices. In American Muslims, we're fully integrated with society. I know exactly how you operate. I know what is good for you has got to be good for me. What's good for me has got to be good for you. If not, it is not sustainable.
That effort in the United States and in Western Europe is certainly needed, and bringing parties together to sit down and talk, as we're doing right now, is obviously very beneficial. Yet we're seeing still today a massive effort by in many cases, the Muslim community, in many cases, world governing bodies like the UN, to fight against democracies in the Middle East, Israel. And when I say democracies, there's really only one. It is Israel. What we have seen, and for those that are following the geopolitics of Israel, there's a lot of stuff happening right now behind the scenes. Under Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister of Israel, you're starting to see alliances that are built underground in between them and Saudi Arabia. They're taking a look at the threats that are coming out of Iran, the Shiites. Okay, what is the feeling from the Muslim community on Israel and whether or not they are an ally in this fight and the perspective there?
Well, first of all, let me give how societies function. If there is justice, all societies function peacefully. If there is a lack of justice, whether it is in a family, community, or countries, it's going to create chaos. Injustice to one is injustice to all, as Martin Luther King had said. With Israel, there is a miscommunication between the Palestinians and Israelis. I have a full blog called Israel-Palestine Dialogue. I have written over 100 articles on that. The Palestinians were never explained the suffering the Jewish people have gone for 3,000 years. When they finally felt home in in Spain, that Ferdinand idiot threw them out. And all of a sudden you're completely uprooted. You're homeless. Then Germany, it was home to them. They were fully integrated in Germany. Then Hitler did it. It's very insecure. And that insecurity needs to be addressed. And creating the land of Israel for them gave them a sense of security that this is my land, I'm here for eternity. That security the Jewish people needed, and everybody understood that. Now, this needs to be communicated to the Palestinian people.
But it's not. I mean, the children are being raised to go out and murder Jews.
Not all children, but that is wrong. What they're doing is
not
wrong.
all children, but enough. I mean, how many children does it take to kill others?
So it is in the interest of Israeli politicians. I'm going to separate between Israel, Jews, and Israeli government. There are three different things. You can get that clearly. The Israeli people, the Jewish people need to see this is a problem. How do we solve it? Do we demand them to fix, or can we be partner with them and bring about a change? The Palestinian people, for 3 generations, they're rotting in their tents, in the camps. Every human being, whether you or me, want to have a sense of belonging to a place. They don't have. They don't know what their home is.
Do you believe Hamas represents their interests?
Initially they did, but when they have become...
2006, right?
They did initially, but not anymore. They're into themselves. Mm-hmm. They're not representing the people of Palestine, and they need to be out. Somehow they're going to be out someday. But they do not represent. What they do is terrorism. Hamas, the way they're sending rockets into Israel, is wrong. So
you agree that Israel has the right to defend themselves?
Absolutely.
So
everybody has the right to defend
why
themselves.
Is it when they do defend themselves, the UN Security Council comes down on them?
Well, they go to the cause. They see the people in Gaza have no choice. They're completely blockaded. They can't get their food, so they're digging under the tunnels. Mm-hmm. If we get them to live their own life, Israel completely controls it. If we give them freedom to produce their own electricity, run their shops, run their schools, more than likely they will not resort to that violence. So UN looks at it from that way. Not only UN, the entire international body sees. I'm talking not me, I'm saying what they see. They see that people are blockaded. If you corner a little child, the child cannot fight with you because you're more powerful than the little guy. What does the little guy do? He throws spoons, he throws forks, whatever he has got, throws forks at you, abuses your words. That's exactly what's happening. As an adult, you need to behave too.
Well, I think these are all very, very good lessons. And coming from the American Muslim community, they see this, you see this, and obviously you're advocating for this. I think one of the greatest threats is that this is not being discussed. And I was in Israel recently, and there's a lot of Arabs that work in Israel, and everybody seems to get along. The American news and quite frankly the Western European news does not discuss this. They take a look at one attack that might happen with a knifing or something, and all of a sudden it's headline news and there's attacks, and in many cases people think that it might actually be trying to slow down tourism to Israel and hurt them economically. Yet they're growing tremendously. What do you see as the greatest geopolitical threat in that region? Is it the Israel-Palestinian conflict? Is it Iran? What is it?
Well, Israel-Palestine conflict is the mother of all conflicts. That's why I'm committed. I'm a supporter of Israel. I just want to make it very clear. Because it's a democracy, we have a chance, we can have a conversation.
Right.
We need to work with all the countries to bring peace to everyone. It's possible, but all of us need to sit down and have a dialogue, understand the needs of the Palestinian people. We're ignoring their needs, and we cannot keep ignoring it forever. And these Palestinian people really need to understand, look, these people have suffered for this long. This is the only sense of security they have. Even
Does that come through aid? Because that money goes to Hamas.
I'm not talking about aid. I'm talking about having a dialogue, sitting down. For example, as the Muslim, I may be the first Muslim in the entire world to have organized the Holocaust and genocide commemoration. The idea is to tell my Jewish friends, brothers and sisters, that you are not alone in this tension. I'm with you. We need to be with each other. If we can take the Holocaust education to the Palestinians, it's not going to happen one night. Slowly, when they start seeing what the Jewish people have gone through it, there will be some empathy. There will be some sympathy. That is the start of a new era. And also we need to ask Netanyahu and the president of the Abbas
yes.
and the Gaza, the guy, Abu Mashal. They need to start their day every morning. Have a dozen children. 5 Palestinian children, 5 Israeli children, and other 2 Christian and other children. Look in their face. Netanyahu is looking into the children's face. Look, guys, I want to build a secure future for you. I'm committed to that. I'm not your villain. I'm your support. I want to do right. And if each one of them says this as a routine prayer every morning, before they make the bad decisions to go bomb somebody, kill somebody, they will think of those children. What does the children think? If you bomb them, their parents, what do they have something to gain back? Nothing but hate.
I think that's a wonderful idea. I think the challenge remains is that the propaganda and the powers that be are indoctrinating those children to hate. And as long as Jerusalem does not remain under total Muslim control, and that the Jews have been pushed out to the sea, you heard the same, okay?
By the way,
and that's the propaganda that these children are still getting. 2017.
Let me correct this for once for all. Palestinians did not say to push them to the sea. It is not in the Hamas Charter either. It was the Israeli president in 1960 or 61. He said, they would say this to us. He made the proposition, and that became as if quoted about
I think
Israel.
There's some interpretation there.
I had talked on Hannity show. I have challenged everybody. Find me where they said. There is no record of that.
Listen, Iran is sending up missiles right now to test ballistic missiles, and on the side of the missiles, written in Hebrew,
yes,
it says "Death to Israel."
That is wrong, and we have 2 choices. We can condemn Iran and cause them to keep digging their heels, or we can sit down and have a dialogue. Look, we are all have to live in this peace. You can kill some, or we can kill some. Where is the end? As the person with power, powerful nations have the obligation to talk to the powerless. Powerless is always going to act more than their capacity. That's what Iran is doing. We can talk into it. I'll be happy to go talk to the Iranians.
Right.
They're not bad guys. Look back in 79, before 79, Iran was the best friend of Israel.
Yep.
Best friend of the United States. How did that change?
Well, you need a revolution to counter the revolution.
We don't need a revolution. We need to change our own attitudes.
Do you believe the Iran deal was a net positive for that to happen?
Which one?
The Iran deal under President Obama.
That's a very positive thing.
You believe that?
Absolutely. It prevented Iran from developing the nuclear weapons immediately. It gives us the breathing room to figure out what else needs to be done. If we didn't have the breathing room, they would have developed, maybe we would have bombed them, they would have bombed. The struggle would have continued. As Americans, we don't want a war.
How do you answer? Correct. Nobody wants a war. And the Iranian people, I've done business with some, are good people. And they enjoy Western goods. They want jeans, and they want the movies and the music.
Absolutely.
Okay? So we're talking about governments here, geopolitics. But how do you answer those individuals that say that the Iran deal basically gave so many loopholes you could drive Mack trucks through? They're testing ballistic missiles, going against the agreements right now. They chant death to America every time there's a crowd. I mean, and there's really no way.
Now, as a powerful nation, do we want them to continue doing the chanting or not? We don't want them to chant that. We don't want these missiles to have written death to Jews, right?
Of course not.
So what do we need to do? The responsibility falls on us because we have the power. We can dictate, or we can.
But you're saying
them.
peace through strength, and a lot of people will say that the President Obama's Iran deal was capitulation, that it was a really bad deal.
I don't think so, but I mean we can differ on that. I agree with that, but to me it prevented Iran from developing nuclear weapons within 3 or 4 years. They're 10 years out. That gives us room to change the equation, build relationships, have diplomatic relationships. Maybe nobody will do any of that. If we need to go for diplomatic relationship, we cannot be pushing people to the edge to cause them to dig in their heels.
Okay. Well, these are really interesting thoughts. And with all of the articles and obviously the press that you do, where can people find you, Mike?
I just put my name, Mike Ghouse. It's a house with a G.
Right.
You can see there are about 16 million views on Google.
And you're at the Center for Pluralism.com. Pluralism.com.
Centerforpluralism.com. And I invite all Americans, reach out the conservatives, liberals, and all. We're Americans first. We want a society where you and I and none of us have to live in fear. We got the programs, and the programs will bring us together more often.
Yep.
The more often we talk with each other, the myths disappear.
I think as a Jewish conservative, from my perspective, I will say this to you, that the more discussions that we have on this level, I think the better and more hopeful things will be. Thank you so much for your time.
I want to
Mike.
assure one more thing to your audience.
Please.
Muslims are not anti-Jewish at all. Not at all.
I know that.
Muslims don't go against Judaism either.
Yep.
Muslims want to embrace, but they're having difficulty with the Israel-Palestinian. If justice is served to Palestinian, from their point of view, this thing will kind of vanish. And I think it is interest. Israel needs to make friends with, alliances with all, not against Iran, but to include Iran. Then the long-term peace will come. If you create an enemy, we're always going to live in tension.
Right.
They're going to live in tension. There is an old Chinese saying, if you want to eliminate an enemy, don't kill them or don't fight with them. Make friends with them.
Great words. Thank you, Mike Ghouse, for your time. Best of luck with everything. We look forward to seeing you again soon.
My pleasure.